Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today's session. I'm Terry Houston, Global Vice President, HR Strategies Consulting. Today, we're going to be talking about HR technology trends in 2020. Thanks for taking the time to come today. I know you are doing a lot of webcasts and Zooms internally, I'm sure, so spending the time with me may just be adding to the number of webcasts that you're on. But I'm hoping today I'll be able to share some valuable insight with you. If anybody has any questions, they can put them in the chat and we'll get to them when we can. And of course, happy to connect with anybody after the session to answer any questions individually as well. Just a little bit of a background on me as to, how I got to learn the HR space the way that I did. I've been in this marketplace for just over 23 years. I worked at HR.com for 7.5 years. Then I did a series of webinars called Reality HR, where I interviewed senior HR executives on their pain points and how they solved them. I also set up all their events, and I probably have heard over 1,000 speakers, very great high-level paid speakers, as well as just industry thought leaders to give me a lot of understanding around the market. I also evaluated technology for a long period of time and really got to understand how it worked and functions and the value it brings to the organizations. I was editor of a publication called Best Places to Work in IT, and I also own my own IT recruiting company prior to getting more in the implementation and services area of HCM from a technology perspective. So today, what we're going to look at is in our trends map here is, what's happening around the pace of innovation. Can't help but talk a bit about COVID. I'll try not to kill you on COVID because I know we're all sick of it, literally. Also want to talk about what's happening from an HR marketplace trend, also from the software side, talk about some mergers and acquisitions in the space and why that's important, the move from HCM to HXM, and again, a focus on best practices around integrated. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about these important topics and share some findings with you that I hope will back what you already know and maybe teach you a few new things. Also help you focus on what you might need to be doing in your organizations as well. So I like to say that the only consistency in technology is change. Technology is changing at a pace we've never seen it in the past. A part of that, of course, is unfortunately, to COVID and the way it's making us relook and reimagine working. It's also just about the investments in technology that have been occurring and are occurring, and the shareholders and the capital market companies that are investing in these types of technologies. And again, more and more about mergers and acquisitions. So let's focus on the COVID impact of technology. I took this quote from McKinsey and Company. It's obviously, and I think we're all feeling this, but these are analysis done to executives, just stating that, innovation is happening in unparalleled pace and that they just don't feel equipped to face the challenge. 90% believe that, the way we do business is going to change dramatically continually for the next 5 years. And I don't think personally, and I don't think anybody probably in this room would disagree with me in the fact that more likely than not, we'll never be back to the old norm. Life has changed, and this is the new norm here. 85% are concerned that it'll have a lasting impact on their customers' needs and wants over the next 5 years. And no doubt it will, because again, just as we're changing and adjusting, so are our customers, so will their requirements and what they need. 21% of have the expertise resources committed to pursue new growth successfully. And 2 out of 3 believe this will be the most challenging moment in their executive careers. And certainly, as I talk to more and more HR executives out on the marketplace, not too many people are really happy with what COVID's doing to HR and the pressures it's putting on us as an organization as well. So definitely, probably some people are rethinking, what the heck am I doing here in HR? Further to this, there's a couple other quotes here from Forrester and Digital. So when we talk about the pace of innovation, so they're saying it set a new standard for the pace of change. We used to say it was an overnight disruption, which typically meant, a few months to a few years for real changes to unfold. If I think back to the old ERP days, when they used to push innovation out every 3 years, and now they're doing it every 6 months, even the big ERP companies, that's a complete change. But what we're seeing now is overnight disruption is really actually meaning overnight disruption. What we're actually seeing out there is a huge shift in our mental model of the world, and it's something that we're forced to cope with and adjust to and make changes for. From a Deloitte Digital briefing that I was in and got the data and information from, it states that in these uncertain times, we found one thing to be certain: the needs for companies across each industry to need to rethink how they function. So I took this quote specifically because as you read through it, what it really says here, and I highlighted specifically about the people. So I'm just going to read it, but obviously you probably are already ahead of me reading it. But it's safe to say that every industry is being challenged to quickly adapt to this new world. And leading that charge from online ordering systems to video chatting is technology. But technology can't do it alone. In order to truly pivot to a more digitalized organization, companies must have an agile backbone of an organization. There are people in their systems that can easily shift gears, adapt to new technology, and take on what's yet to come. So, as I said, I took this quote specifically because I think it hits HR in three ways. One is we need to create that agile backbone in our organization around our people. So the agile, the people, and the third thing is the systems. We need systems in place to help us adjust and adapt to these changing environments that we have. So, COVID is one example, and I'm sure there'll be others to come down, just based out of innovation alone, hopefully not out of more world health concerns. But we need as an organization to be able to pivot in HR and with our people and to reform, reshape, and communicate them quicker than ever before. And unless we have the proper solutions in place to be able to do that and the proper visibility into our organizations and the capabilities to understand our people, their needs and their wants, we won't be able to adapt to these changes. Now, what we're finding on the marketplace also is a lot of companies are in what I would call panic mode. And instead of growing like the leaders are doing, they're just trying to cut costs and preserve themselves. And those are the ones that are going to really struggle as the world goes forwards and adopts, because they're taking all this time to try to recession proof themselves when in fact they need to be reinventing themselves. Hopefully you're not at those organizations because those are the ones where soon, you'll be writing even more and more, ROEs out on the marketplace to let employees go and doing more and more furloughs because you're just not changing the way you're doing business to adjust to the marketplace. So I'm going to start by kind of covering the top 10 technology trends. I got slides on each of these areas, and they're not necessarily in a particular order, nor should the order be identical for every organization out on the marketplace. Every organization will be dealing with these at different levels. Some people may have already had programs in place for some parts of this. They were able to quickly adapt to where we're seeing a big shift. Probably the most common are the reactive health and safety. So there's some great health and safety technology out in the marketplace. Most of them have put in like a COVID type of tracking. So it's utilizing those types of systems that you have and just to help you understand, track, heat spot your employees, who they were with, help you identify risks around COVID. Probably the next biggest thing that I've seen is the whole wellness. And I don't want to steal all the thunder from the other slides. But as I said, we're going to go through all of these top trends. But remember that each organization will see a different impact on implementing or focusing on both the technology or trends associated with these, based on what you already have in place, the type of industry that you're in, your ability to have a remote teleworkers or not have remote teleworkers. So we'll go through some of those facts or figures. But in a nutshell, this is the trends that I'm seeing on the marketplace. So let's jump into wellness. So what's happened with this social isolation is a lot of anxiety, not even just around the job security of the organizations, but people need to be near people. Not being able to see families and friends to gather together to socialize, as we all know, puts a great deal of stress on people. There's a real spike, unfortunately, in divorces, abuse. So they may be dealing with things at home that they've never dealt with before. As a result, of course, this is a huge impact on the mental well-being of our employees, and in some cases, the safety of our employees, based on those environments that they now may be in. So there's been a real surge on wellness programs and apps, including fitness-related apps. So gyms being closed in many locations, yoga classes no longer happening. So people are looking to figure out how to convert rooms to gyms, how to do things at home, through TVs, through apps. They still need that social interaction. Normally it's a buddy that drags you to the gym if you're not a dedicated gym person. So how do you keep your fitness up? So these are all applications that have bloomed and are certainly picking up out there, and things that we can subsidize our employees for to help them have a health and wellness capabilities inside the organization. Ergonomics is also causing a huge impact. Not a lot of people have proper desks and offices at home, and they're working at their kitchen counters or the kitchen tables or on their couches, and causes problems with backs and sitting too long and carpal tunnel because their hands aren't right. So what do we do? What are our obligations as employers to help them by getting the proper mouse, the proper keyboard, desks? We've already probably all gone through any organizations that didn't have laptops, buying up laptops and those types of things. The other thing is now can't get to doctors, and that's causing stress to our employees. So telehealth programs are becoming super important, and can be part of what we offer from a benefit perspective. Also, we're going to see increased amount of absences. People that are being forced to go into the offices just aren't willing to go into the offices. People with the smallest sniffle and cold, not only are they staying at home, probably should be staying at home, which is causing huge taxing problems for organizations around absences, especially in manufacturing and shift work, and trying to last minute replace these while still keep consistent shifts so that nobody outside of your shift, everybody's on a COVID specific shift. So again, the dimensions around COVID are very complex. So we're needing to really relook at our employee insurances and benefits, and what we can provide to our employees, and how we can help them in these specific areas. We were spending a lot of money on wellness. It was a trend anyways before COVID, because we know there's a direct correlation with wellness to performance, with wellness and the cost of our benefit programs, which is also important to our organization, as well. Wellness from a happy employee, and happy employees turn into happy customers. Also, what we're finding a big problem with this remote workforce and the COVID impact is around financial wellness. So a lot of people have members of their family. So if not them specifically, their spouses. So some companies have gone down to 3 or 4 day work days. Some companies have just done complete layoffs and are expecting, the government to subsidize employees until things are better, if things are better. Um, but if employees are still under our employment, their spouses may be laid off and their income in their households may be suffering. So, offering types of financial wellness seminars, how to invest, how to save, any training that you can do around that. Our little yoga inner chair person, just helping people learn to cope with stress, financial difficulties, all of these. Can't stress enough how important it is to put wellness as a major thought process in what we're doing in our organizations. Helping our employees will obviously help us. So next leads into the remote or the teleworkers. I don't think remote is ever going to go away. A lot of people that got a taste of working remote are just never going to want to go back to the office, at least in a full-time capacity. I know a lot of people are struggling with policies, plans, and communications, not just even short term, but long term. And we need to be having those tough conversations now with the owners of our businesses around, what their willingness will be for that long term. And as business owners, if they're small business owners on this session, of course, you have to start to make decisions around letting office space go, stopping internet in your office if people aren't in your office, like cutting costs as well, if things are not being utilized inside your organization. So we need both short-term, adjustments to COVID, but long-term plans and strategies in place around what we want to do. We also know that as organizations continue to hire, that job seekers are now going to demand this as an option. As I said, they've had a taste of working remote. Not everybody loves it, but the good majority of people are appreciating at least having the opportunity a couple days a week to work remote. So we're going to have to relook at how we promote our organizations and how we create that culture of inclusiveness despite having remote workforces. And we'll talk more about that part of it when we get into the communications aspect. So some of the things to think about while creating these policies and plans are trying to mediate some of the impact we've seen in the past over just the organizations that were doing teleworking in general. So what was happening historically was we were noticing trends about fewer promotions and lower salary growth for remote workers. So that's not going to hold very effective for people moving forward. If retaining top performers is your key issue, you're going to have to do things and change things up to ensure that these historical views don't happen any further. Of course, we talked already about mental health issues. So they still continue to be issues for people that do work remote. So as an organization, if you're going to continue to dictate that your employees work remote, again, take you back to the last slide, focus on health and wellness and benefit plans that you can do to provide to employees to mitigate these issues and to reduce the overall cost of your benefits. The other thing is managers seem to have a higher perception of employees that are physically inside the office place. Maybe it's because if they're in the office, they feel their employees should. Maybe they haven't made those connections and bonds. So what can we do to break down those barriers and have everybody viewed equally? So there's a lot, again, getting into the communication later on that we can talk about doing those types of things. The other thing is if we do have split workforces where some work at home and some work remote, there can be resentment around the people that have to work in the office. And as a result, we've noticed a real trend over higher absenteeism and turnover for on-site staff based on that. And these are all things, of course, we have to take into consideration when determining if we're going to make it mandatory for people to work in the office or not. And where we know that there are organizations that can't, unfortunately, just tell everybody to work remote. Has to be a variation between on-site and off-site. But it's really taking these things into consideration when pulling together your policies and plans about the impacts, potential impacts, so the pluses and minuses of on-site versus remote. So I'm just pointing them out so you take them into consideration. Obviously, the benefit of continuing a remote work life is because people are enjoying it. It is providing a better work-life balance for a lot of our employees. The commute time is zero. They're able to be there for their children, especially the ones that haven't returned to school or doing remote school work. So there's been huge uptake of benefits and the work-life balance from working from home. There's also studies that show that our best employees are more productive remote. Of course, your bad employees are probably have a potential to be less productive at home too. So it's really also using proper tools and technology to identify who your top performers and bottom performers are, and mitigating the disparity between the two, both through how we interact with them or remedial action, even as severe as getting rid of your C and D players and the marketplace. So that was a little bit about the whole telecommuting. Now, the next bullet that I had around HR technology and trends is the whole use of artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. Maybe shouldn't have used all the acronyms here for everybody that may not be 100% familiar with it. HR isn't the fastest to adopt AI and RPA, but we're starting to see an uptake. So again, this was some statistics that I gathered to share with you. And basically, for 53% of all organizations have already started utilizing these. A lot of them, as I said, are in manufacturing, but we're seeing a huge uptake in HR specific, and I'm going to talk about it in HR and specific coming up. But the real key drivers around this is the fact that it looks like anybody that has implemented any type of artificial intelligence or robotics has returned a 4 times return on their investment for top return on investment for people that aren't classified as top performers. So that's a very large return on investment, and that can happen year over year, time over time. So it definitely can pay for itself implementing these types of technology. The reason to use AI and RPA is both around compliance as well as productivity. So we want to make sure that we're capturing data and information and keeping us legally compliant. But at the same time, we want to improve productivity by getting rid of mundane tasks and data entry that our employees are doing that are stopping them from being strategic in the organization because they're very transactional or paper focused, and allow them to focus on really influencing, the culture of organizations, the direction of the company, focusing on better hires, better engagement strategies, better analytics inside of our organizations. And the bottom line is that, they believe that there'll be near universal adoption in 5 years. So every company within the next 5 years will be using AI or RPA somewhere inside their organization. So let's talk more specifically about this inside of HR and where we're seeing the uptake. So probably the most predominant place that I'm seeing this right now is in the use for recruiting. So chatbots, you may all be familiar with. So now when recruiters go on job sites, they can, literally say their name, what position they're interested in. They can actually book interviews directly. They can ask about benefits and pensions and salary and all those things that they don't have data and answers for until they hopefully get into an interviewing stage. So not only does it streamline the overall recruitment process, especially for organizations doing high volume recruiting, but more importantly, it allows them to open up and ask questions that they may not have asked for in the past or had that data and information going into those meetings. We've also seen, similar to recruiting, the next phase of a recruiting is onboarding. There's a lot of manual paperwork and tasks, entry of data into multiple systems that has to be done. So again, a lot of transactional tasks, and automating a lot of that using robotics is becoming extremely important. I know when I was at SAP SuccessFactors, they were hiring 27,000 employees a year, and they've used robotics to streamline, getting that onboarding data and information from Excel, from SharePoint, and other vehicles, pulling them together and sending out onboarding messages with all the components associated it without somebody manually having to do all that work. Also, artificial intelligence is being used to mine the data to find the best candidate and the best match. So it's an extension, a lot more sophisticated than what we saw in the past, where you would do keyword matching, but much better algorithms that help us find and identify the best possible candidates for your organization. We're all getting Alexa-like or Siri, used to Alexa or Siri inside of our organization or in our homes especially. And now what we're finding is organizations are using robotics to do the same type of thing. So now, as a head of HR, I can talk into my phone and say, Alexa, what's my head count today? Alexa, what's my percentage of female managers? So these are the types of controls we want to have. So instead of tasking somebody to pull this report and getting in 3 or 4 days, literally by commands, into a computer, I can find this data and information. We're also seeing a huge uptake on this around succession planning and career development. So we can see the progression paths of our employees and be able to create predictions for other people. We can use this data and information even when we're recruiting. So in our recruiting, we can show people that are applying for an entry-level role the projection most commonly taken in our organizations for people that started at that position. And we know that's hugely important because we know development is equally important these days to money for individuals when making hiring decisions. So being able to use AI and not only help retain our existing employees as we move them through the organization and get them into roles that they want to grow to, we can use this to help us attract top talent as well. Learning, you see it already out. I mean, as a woman, I see it all the time. If I buy a pair of red shoes, they tell me about a red handbag. If you buy a comforter, they'll tell you about pillows. So all of these types of algorithms are already happening out there, and they happen for learning in organizations. So our content and our learning management systems can be displayed for people. So when you search for a leadership course, it will tell you other courses that other people registered for or were similar. Again, so using this technology to put a focus on helping people find the data and information that's most relevant and useful, and helping them with adoption and consuming this information will be extremely important to our organizations and the success of educating, developing people within our organization. The other thing we're seeing now is, on our Google or Apple Watches and things like that, it's telling us to move, it's telling us to take breaks, it's telling us to stretch. This same type of functionality is available in HR to tell your employees similar thing. So, you haven't had holidays in a long period of time. You need to take a break. All of this can be done using this type of technology as well. Just like we had the chat bots for recruiting, obviously we can use these also from an HR help desk perspective. So, how many holidays do I have left? What is my maternity leave? Even booking holidays right through the use of these types of technologies to speed that up, especially for organizations that are working with blue collar workers who don't have access to computers. They can type in or talk into these systems to find data and information and take action and tasks that they don't have to sit in front of a laptop for. Obviously, the big thing with these in totality is to reduce completely data entry and manual administration of mundane tasks. Nobody wants these as part of their jobs. They're often necessary evils, but often too time consuming. If you ask your HR employees how much is spent on manual tasks, the quote below says that 72% of HR time is spent on this. So just think about that for a second. If 72% of your day is spent on stuff that could be done through robotics, what would that do to you as an individual and you as an organization by putting a skilled worker that you have in a position where they have time to really influence and be much more strategic in your organization? I mean, it's really mind boggling. I mean, just implementing HR technology alone can solve a lot of problems and issues, but this takes it to the extreme. So definitely something we should all be tracking, making sure if you are making investments in technology that the companies that you're working with, if they don't have this available now, at least have it in their roadmap, because you don't want to not go out with this without this long term. So if everybody's going to be doing this in 5 years, you want to make sure you are too. And speaking just of computers and technology, the other thing that we're really noticing, especially in as well in the HR space, is what we call apps or extensibility. And that's the ability to take a core HR system that you may own and layer on apps that are directly connected with it, that may be produced by partners of the company that you bought from, or software developers out there, or other major products that know that specific feature is missing, from one of the dominant HR players. So you can go to into app centers for most of these major companies, and you're able to look at, download, and buy apps that they extend the value of your traditional core HR system. So, for instance, if you're in the services business and you want to manage projects and teams inside of your core HR system, there's an app for that. If you want to, if you have a lot of job descriptions and you want to find an easier and simpler way to manage and maintain theirs, there's an app for that. So again, it's the extensibility. It's taking what you've invested technology-wise, or what you plan to invest in technology-wise, and know you have the capability to extend it and not get dead-ended. Also, extensibility can also mean another thing. Many of the vendors now in the marketplace, the leading ones, are enabling you to create right inside the system your own extensibility. So it's the ability for you to take any unique manual process you have and be able to build that in the system simply and easily and put workflows around it. So imagine, as you start to write lists, and I challenge you to do that over the next month, every time you do something outside of a HR system, write it down. And then we can figure out which ones of those can be handled through technology that you may have, or which ones of those could be built inside this extensibility with some of these vendors. It's really, again, game changing for organizations to have the flexibility to choose a solution that enables them to manage the uniqueness in their organization by having those capabilities. It's definitely something, as organizations, big and small, get more complex or want to be more unique, enabling that to happen. So now we're going to focus a little bit more on engagement and what this means and how that shifted, because we're not having water bottle conversations. We're not having people drop into our office. We're not meeting in the lunchroom. We're not getting those opportunities to have those social connects with our employees. So engagement has to be a focus for us. It's all part and parcel. I think the next several slides focus around engagement, communications, and feedback are all tightly related. So not just because of COVID, but because of millennials, and millennials are going to be 75% of our workforce in the next 5 years. So it's really important to start building strategies around those. They thrive on frequent communication and feedback. So we need frequent communication and feedback now due to COVID, to help with the loneliness of working remotely, to build still those relationships and those rapports, and to keep our company feeling fun and friendly, and and having that culture that we want and we need in order to attract new people to work for us. So we need to really be thinking about our communication strategies, and I have a slide specific on this coming up. And we all need all different forms of feedback. So we need regular and we need ad hoc, but more importantly, we also still need formal feedback. You know, so we should be surveying and surveying and surveying, or at least asking and getting that type of feedback. So there's a remote worker survey that I'm going to actually, spoiler alert, give you access to if you're interested at the end of this as a value for being in today's session. But there's also surveys around engagement. There's surveys that tell you how well your benefits program is supporting them. There's surveys around how's your recruiting working? What was the candidate experience like? Same for onboarding, and more and more. So we need to know what's working and what's not working. With the caveat, I will tell you, is do not ask what's not working if you're not willing to make any changes. So if your organization is unwilling to change anything, do not ask, because that's the worst thing you can do, is tell people you care about their feedback and do nothing about it. So this leads us into communication. So communication is still and always will be, despite how hard we try to be diligent around communicating, a challenge of every organization, every department, every manager, every employee will always tell you that they don't have enough communication from all of them. So there's the real uptake further on integrating and using things like Slack and Teams inside of your technology. Obviously, we're using Zoom today. There's 1,000. Chime is another free one. WebEx is popular. I use GoToMeeting for my popular business meetings. I also use Teams meetings a lot. Anyways, virtual meetings aren't just a necessity for business. We need to utilize virtual meetings for connects with our teams. We just recently, inside of our organization, made it mandatory that we turn on our cameras, because it's body language and tone, not just tone, but body language that really conveys messaging, facial expressions. So if you're constantly having meetings on mute, you can't really see who's paying attention or not. But more so is they can't see how passionate or upset or excited you are as well when you're not doing these things. So I encourage everybody, at least from the top up, to be presentable and be on cameras as often and as frequent as possible. The other thing is newsletters kind of dwindled. We had electronic newsletters, but it's time to pick them up, dust them off, make them happen more regularly. Newsletters that include not just stuff specific to the company, but feel good things, like try to put a good story in, try to do anything you're doing in the organization to help the environment, to help the homeless, the poorless, your own team, your own staff. Put a section in for spouses. Everybody's more connected now. We're seeing each other's kids and dogs and moms and wives and husbands walk behind our screens. That's the blessing, I guess, in some ways, is we're getting to know each other on that type of personal level better. But again, making them feel like you're welcoming them and their family, because now we really have to do that inside. There's also great collaboration rooms. Jam and Yammer are two that came to mind. Social collaboration tools that are built. They're very secure for private organizations. So instead of creating a group on, Facebook or LinkedIn, these are tools that an organization can use that allows you to have both private and open groups, have chats, conversation, upload videos, do documents, share data and information. So strongly encouraged to create as many rooms as you can around how to help your teams collaborate in these remote settings. Millennials also strive for calibration. They work way better in teams and they work way better collaborating. So if you haven't invested in those things, something to think about. Similar, SharePoint is another central place for storing documents and information. Again, that's more of a pull, so people have to go to SharePoint and pull data and information. So what I like more about the collaboration rooms and the newsletters is we're pushing out content, which is my next point. So don't put everything somewhere. Don't do a great job of communicating in a communications folder. Make sure that you're actually pushing the content out so that people have access to it and can see it. And of course, one-on-one and team meetings and even corporate meetings, we need to make sure that these are happening more and more regularly. Not just one-on-one about projects and business, but one-on-one about how are you? What can I do for you to help you? What tools do you need? Do you need better internet? Do you need a desk? Do you need everything. These are about what can we do one-on-one with our employees and managers to make us more effective. And we should be having these regardless of COVID, but more and more importantly now. And same with team meetings. Let's get our teams together more frequently, share data and information, both inside or outside of those collaboration rooms. And then town hall meetings. Everybody wants still some visibility into the CEOs, the C-level suite of our organization. So let's try to make those happen. Okay. So this leads us to, these one-on-one meetings leads me into this whole continuous feedback. So some of the big trends, and these are popular in most of your performance management systems, is adding this, layering it on top of your annual reviews, these types of positive reinforcements and feedback. So organizations are either calling them pulse meetings or continuous performance management. But the whole idea is to spur on these regular conversations and to ensure, consistent feedback is happening there. Pulse surveys are more around, reinforcing regularly asked questions, keeping things top of mind, making sure that everybody still has the same sentiment around things so that we can make actions. And again, my biggest concern around surveys is if we don't take any action on it, they can really backfire on you. So 60% of US employees saying that having a way to provide feedback about their own employee experience is important, and only 30% said that it's actually acted on. So this is kind of backing that. So again, communicate. Feedback is the things that we need to have happening. So, when we think about performance and engagement and the tight correlation, as we said, the way we worked has changed. It's not just about how the employee is impacting teams, divisions, departments, and organization. There's a real shift out there around behaviors and ethics and trust versus job-related skills and competencies. We're seeing more and more that people want to work like they play. So they want the same type of consistent feedback and, that they get on Instagram inside their work environment. They don't want to have to wait till an annual review or semi-annual review And we have to make sure that communication is happening both ways. So it's not just a manager communicating to an employee, but it's the ability, as we talked about in those ones and ones, for an employee to communicate to a manager. So again, get out of those. Everybody's in meeting. Um, Trying to think of a non-swear word, like a meeting overload, and so we don't want to add more useless meetings to our employees. But what we do want to do is provide effective ways for employees and managers to communicate together above and beyond just the fire drills around projects and work that has to be done, but about unique development opportunities. So we want to be able to inspire and empower our employees. We want to make sure that we're giving them coaching and continuous feedback. We want to make sure that we're giving them mobile access to things that they didn't have access to before, to make them feel connected and to be able to allow them to access it regardless of where they are and where they're working. Because now people are working from home in cottages or their parents' place because they're looking after them or whatever the case would be. And we need to make sure that they have a capability of getting the data and information they need, not only to perform their jobs, but to help with their wellness and well-being in the organizations. So please consider these pulse surveys, these continuous check-ins. It'll make a big difference in your organization. One of the last trends that I talked about in my top 10 list was the whole health and safety. So health and safety, especially in manufacturing, has always been top of mind. Accident awareness, but now COVID and the ability to track that, even being able to see who was near who, uh, easy ways to reach out and can contact anybody that's been association with anybody COVID, tracking absences, who's resolved from COVID. All of that stuff is very time consuming and cumbersome, but extremely important. So health and safety apps have all built that in, and not all, but a lot of them have built that in. So if you haven't invested, do it, because even if we get past this COVID break, something similar is going to happen in the future. So let's get prepared. Might as well do that now than later. Um, the other thing is we're seeing a real increase in the number of solutions, out on the marketplace. So again, try not to constantly run out and buy point solutions. We're going to talk about integrated talent management coming up, um, but pick wisely, and try to get systems that are connected, so we don't have all these lack of integrations and having to feed and manually enter data, who the employees are that are from system to system or need IT to always be connecting these systems. Um, there's also, under health and safety, as we talked about in the beginning, tons of wellness apps and software that are out there around this. And these health and safety apps are also above and beyond doing COVID. I mean, it's all about OSHA compliance, so your 300 reports, your incident reporting is about standardizing the data and entry so we can get analytics and report on it, so we can go back and look at historical trends, so we can make improvements, so we can identify workplace safety issues like poor lighting, steep steps, things like that. So as we track and anomalize this data, we can actually truly impact the health and safety of our employees, and we want to do that. So why not now, under the guise of COVID, get a really great health and safety solution above and beyond just COVID tracking, because we should be doing this for the protection of our employees, even in organizations that don't need steel toe boots and hard hats. These are still very important things to be looking for in any organization. So out of the top 10 list now, and over to some of the other trends that we're seeing on the marketplace in HR space, in the 23 years I've been here, I just can't tell you how much mergers and acquisitions there's been out on the marketplace, and some of the more notable ones. And I'm focusing predominantly on the larger players. So I apologize if anybody wants data and information about some of the smaller organizations. It's readily available on the web, but happy to provide it. But Cornerstone, well, Saba bought Halogen, Cornerstone bought Saba. They also bought Lemise in the past. So there's been a lot of mergers from a Cornerstone perspective. Workday has had, I think, 14 acquisitions over the last 4 years, and these are the three most recent. So Scout, which puts them in the procurement space, Adaptive Insight, which gives them the ability to do much more advanced analytics, specifically within their modules or with any third-party systems in there and out on the marketplace. And then SAP bought Qualtrics, and just the leader in the employee surveying and also customer engagement surveys. So they have both there. They also bought Contextor, which was an RPA product and solution, but them, like Workday, had other major acquisitions. In fact, of course, SAP bought SuccessFactors in 2011, and we'll show some of that on the upcoming slide. Also, there was a big merger between Ultimate Software and Kronos, two what I would call very up and coming, predominant mid-market players, solid leaders in, I think of Workday, SAP and Oracle as the big giants. And I find that Ultimate sometimes comes upstream, and then sometimes, the three players go downstream where Ultimate really should be sometimes winning those deals. I put Oracle. I couldn't find any real recent HR acquisitions from them. I think they're building Oracle Fusion, and they already bought Taleo and a bunch of others. I'll show you on the next screen. But I did think it was really, obviously, super important to talk about TikTok and that acquisition because it was mammoth. And with the changes in technology, there is no doubt, just like, LinkedIn bought lynda.com and TikTok with Oracle, I could see obviously how they'll start to use that from an HR perspective for recruiting or whatever coming down the pipe. May not be right away, but I'm sure they've already got eyes on that somewhere. Sorry, I added some of this to this since my last, and I didn't populate properly. So I'm just going to expand it all and just talk about what's happened over the last 20 years in HR. So in the 2000s, everything became .com. There was a .com bust, as everybody knows. So everything went to the cloud. You could put resumes in the cloud. You could post jobs in the cloud. The job boards started to come out, so then recruiting solutions came out, everything all of a sudden was done in the cloud. So you had some leaders there like Taleo, SuccessFactors, and Connexa. And of course, what happened in 2010 was that it was a move away from best practice point solutions back to integrated. So the big integrated companies like SAP, Oracle, and IBM at that point in time bought up. IBM bought Connexa, SAP bought SuccessFactors, and Oracle bought Taleo. And always the first eaten up. The best in the top one in the marketplace is by far gets the best return on dollar, I would say. So SuccessFactors, I think, was bought for $3.4 billion by SAP, and Taleo and Connexa were like 1.8 and 1.4 billion. So it's about getting consumed first. That's important. Anyways, what happened in 2010? There was all this amalgamation, and then all of a sudden, again, we started to see this real influx of point solutions, and I just listed a very small amount of them, but there's a trillion of them out there that came up into the marketplace. And we've already started to see the merger of those, and some of them, even like Cornerstone and Lemise and Saba, and those that have bought up. And again, as we talked about, Workday, Oracle, and SAP, I think I'm missing a couple of bullet points here, are really moving their products. So are, by the way, a couple companies I haven't mentioned at all that are doing great strides, as well as ADP and Ceridian. And then there's a ton of third level performance companies out there. But now what they're doing is reshaping and reworking their products to be what we call not human capital management products, but actually human experience management solutions. So in Web 1.0, it was like, let's put it in the cloud. And Web 2.0 was let's automate for HR. And Web 3.0 is now about buying a solution that is about um, experience management, making sure every experience for us in HR, but more importantly, for our managers and our employees is nothing but top notch. And this is again why we're seeing mergers and acquisitions and people driving to be at this 3.0 stage out in the marketplace. So that leads me to, why do I say, look at integrated solutions, not best of breed? I'm a true believer that if you invest in a decent sized software like some of the ones that I've been mentioning so far, um, that with their release cycles, if they don't have it now, it will get into the system. So what we don't want to go out is just jump out after some new feature that sure may make a huge difference to our organization. But really what we want to do is work with the vendors and shape and know that if they're serving major organizations out on the marketplace, that they're going to build those same qualities into their products because it will get there. So we don't want to keep, if anybody's implemented a lot of technology, I don't think anybody would put their hand up and say, hey, that's a hell lot of fun, right? Like, no, they're going to say, it was a necessary thing, but it's not something I want to do for a living. Because every project, regardless of how great the software is or how great the consulting company is, there's ups and downs, miscommunications. There's things that happen that cause bumps in the roads and make it not a great experience, even though at the end you hopefully get the result that you're looking for. So again, I would encourage you to not run out, buy one-off solutions. They don't talk to each other, they don't communicate with each other, and as a result, these are all the reasons. I guess we can go through these specifically. Sorry. So, you want one vendor to manage, you don't want it to manage tons of them. You want one place, one single sign-on, one interface, costs you less time in training, you'll get higher user adoption. You'll also have the ability to get improved analytics because you're not to custom building them. You'll have a lot less integrations and downtime. It'll save you a lot of costs because you can buy at economies as well. So we got about 2 minutes left. I've got a few more slides, so I might speed through a couple of them. But again, I just wanted to talk to you about that whole employee experience management. So as I said, it's the move from human capital management to human experience management. And what does that really mean, right? So it's a unique approach that helps us perceive employees as assets. So if employees are truly our number one assets, then what we want to do is make sure we're treating them accordingly. So we want to be able to measure and analyze their value and look at them as an investment like we would do at anything else in the business. So as a result, what we need to be doing is providing them the tools that they need to be the best that they can be in the job that they are now and the job that they want to be in the future. And it doesn't mean just HR tools. It means maybe they need better laptops, maybe they need better cell phones, maybe they need better headsets, whatever it is that is going to improve our employees' performance, improve their capability to do their job, make them feel connected. These are all extremely important factors that we want to take into consideration. So this, and you guys will get these slides as a question, sorry, that was asked, is you'll get these after. And this was a thing that Forbes did, and a couple of the bullet points here that really stood out for me is that, for instance, 82% of employees at high performing companies are highly engaged, while only 68% are at underperforming. I think, but the bigger statistic is here that is 0.5, that companies with a highly engaged workforce experience a 19.2% growth in operating income over a 12-month period of time. Now, wow, if you go back to your manager and say, I can improve your operating income over 12-month period by 19.2%, think of what your company's sales are and what dollar amount that means to them. and you'll have their ears. And these are some of the things that we need to use from an ROI perspective, um, to really drive home the value of investing in these types of technologies, right? So um, we need to relook and rethink the ways of how we communicate with our employees. So, we need to think about how we communicate, interact, share, learn, find, and do. The how we do it and the what we expect and what we want and when we do it inside our organizations. But really, we're becoming different people in HR. So our traditional roles were, talent management, total rewards, OD. It's about health and safety and in that. And now we're really changing change agents and cultural architects and experience designers. So we really have to rethink the value of us. And of course, if we have the technology to alleviate 72% of our manual tasks, we have more time to be these ninjas and really impact the culture and the experience of our organizations. So, in order to make a difference and make a great day for every employee, I've got this list called the Great Eight. So, these are the things that we need to do to, really make an impact. Is enable people to do the best that they can do in these specific areas. They want to know. That they can be inspired. They want to use their strengths. They want to know they made progress. They want to see an impact. They want to collaborate. They want to feel accomplished. So all of these are the things that we're going to strive for, utilizing technology to be able to do that. So I'm running out of time. And I just wanted to share with you that special offer that I talked about. So there is a remote workforce pulse survey available through Qualtrics. If anybody's interested in testing the temperament of your employees, you can email me and I'll work with you to get you access to that survey so you can see how well your employees are adjusting to the changing world based on COVID, and help you as an organization figure out where you're going to get the most return on investment and value out of the solution. So thanks a lot for sharing this hour with me. Really appreciate it, everybody. Stay safe, everybody.